All right,
Please.
I'd like to invite my panel up. Marina, you started the last thing. We're continuing with the future. I think branded residential is part of the future of hospitality. It really is the sexy, booming sector. You need mics, yes. While we're waiting, so that you're in the right room, this is the future of hospitality investments in branded residences, co-living, service departments in the kingdom. My name is Scott Antel. I'm a hotels lawyer, 30 years working principally in emerging markets. Since I moved to the Middle East, more and more, I'd say 70% of what I do when it comes to a hotel has a branded residential element to it. We're waiting for Daniel. I have my own firm, and I work mainly with usually developers, but also operators, because in this sector with branded residential, apart from some of the big players, the expertise is not that great. I'm going to let my panel introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. This is open to questions, so please raise your hand, and we'd like an active participation. Ask what you want. So first, Paul.
Good afternoon, Paul Bridger, Rove Hotels. If you haven't heard of us, we're born in the UAE, and we recently launched branded residences probably about 12 months ago. We've seen lots of demand. We've probably done about 2,000 units in the 12 months, with similar amount coming in the next 12 months.
So my name is Serena, and I'm with the Ascott Limited. I'm the Chief Growth Officer, looking after the growth plans for Ascott on a worldwide basis. So for those who don't know, the Ascott Limited, we were born in Singapore 40 years ago. We started first in service apartments, but through strategic, acquisitions in platforms, through building brands, we have now 940 properties. Over 164,000 units and 14 brands. And we are in service apartments, in hotels, in resorts, in co-living, and also in active senior living. So quite a number of asset classes under Ascott.
Julien.
Good afternoon. So I'm Julien, Director of Development for Mixed Use in EMEA region. I work for Marriott International. Just to focus on the branded residential sector, we're the global leader in branded residential management and branding. We have 250 branded residential projects around the world, and about half of that is open and half is in the pipeline and in current sales. And just to clarify, when we say branded residential, we mean either apartment product or villa product for sale.
And that's both connected, the traditional associated with the hotel, but the standalone as well.
That's
which
correct.
Is becoming increasingly popular, particularly in Dubai.
Yes, so we have branded residences both developed together with a hotel or standing alone, just purely residential, managed by ourselves under our brand.
And good afternoon, everybody. Daniel von Barloewen. I'm the Regional Vice President for Accor One Living, looking after mixed use for Europe, Middle East, Africa. Our main focus within that is branded residences, where we aren't quite at the 250. We have about 150 operating and pipeline branded residential projects around the world. We open on average one branded residence every 6 weeks, and they range across the traditional portfolio of Accor, the lifestyle portfolio of Ennismore, from ultra luxury all the way down to mid-scale. Within the kingdom, we have 2 operating projects and 10 in the pipeline, opening up over the course of the next 5 years. An area that we're seeing a lot of growth, and as we were just saying, standalone also. Last year, about 20% of the projects that we signed globally were standalones. This year will probably be around 25% or more. So a significant growth that we're seeing in standalone residential as well.
Just to set the definitions, because there's often confusion about the terms. The service department, you're managing those, or are you actually buying the building, owning and managing?
So for Ascott, we have the properties here that we manage in Saudi. They are third-party owned and managed by us. And when we say serviced apartments, I think since we're on the topic of definitions, maybe we could also sort of define what service apartments are. So the way we look at service apartments for Ascott is that we see this as a residential living, whereby these are self-sustained spaces with essential hotel facilities and amenities. And so these could be studios, these could be 1, 2, 3 bedrooms. And when we talk about residential living, they will come with kitchens, with pantry, with living spaces as well. And that's our definition of service apartments. And for us, service apartments, some have the connotation that for service apartments, that these are guests who stay there for extended stay or for long stay. The way we see it is basically that we cater to travelers who may be traveling for various reasons, and their stay may be short, may be extended, may be long. And if you take a look at Ascott's track record, about 46% of our business is actually short stay. So again, just wanted to clarify in terms of what the definition of service apartments and the business mix that we do, which is both short, extended, and long stay.
Okay. Whereas for a branded residence, you're making a freehold sale. A party is buying that residences, whether to live in, or it may, say, a resort facility, there may be a rental pool where they buy it as an investment product and let it out through the hotel brand. I mean, with the branded residences, initially, it's a win-win-win for the parties. For the developer, they get an increased uplift on the sales price, anywhere from 15 to 40%. They get the access to the design standards, the technical service standards that the brands have. They get the prestige of the brand. For the operator, this is a new gig for them. They get a 3 to 6% license fee for, frankly, not doing a whole lot. I know you guys don't like me to say that, but it's a pretty good deal. And it's a new line of business for them. If it's associated with a hotel, they've got a captive audience, affluent captive audience to utilize the hotel facilities. And then for buyers, the prestige of being associated with a brand, the access to top design, probably greater assurance, we'll get to this, that the product they get in the brochure is going to be built to the scale that's promised and the standard that's promised, and potentially a resale premium when they sell it. So that's lovely. But over the life of the project, the objectives and interests of the three parties may vary. And the successful project has to be structured upfront, thought through, so you can keep that alignment over the life of the project. Now let's move to the KSA situation. How is your demand here different than, say, Dubai or European markets? I would think here, particularly with the number of expatriate workers coming in, that the service department model would be extremely attractive, and also the fact that with KSA, foreigners, non-Saudi individuals cannot buy property, real estate.
Yeah. So for us, again, we are in the business of, we're an accommodation provider, and we are in the business of, also focusing on residential style living. And, when we talk about residential style living, especially here in Saudi, whereby there is a lot of, travelers coming in due to relocation. There's a lot of travelers coming in, who want, an extended stay and a long stay sort of philosophy for relocation. There are also, travelers coming in, and also within the domestic travel as well, with huge families and large entourage, and therefore also looking for a bigger space to stay in. And we also, in Saudi, there's also a lot of solo travelers, and solo travelers who, want to also have a sense of community. They are digital nomads and looking for spaces whereby they can stay a bit longer to work and to play. So I think that our business here in Saudi is not so different from our other parts of the world as well. because we see similar travel trends. We do find, though, that in Saudi that there is a huge gap for service apartments, and that is a huge gap that we are focused on filling. We have 4 properties right now in Saudi, another 4 under construction. And as we see with more integrated resorts, with more integrated developments, with the giga projects, with the secondary cities opening up as part of 2030, the Vision 2030, there is definitely a push for more demand for residential style living. And I think that's where our focus is. So we're not into branded residential here in Saudi. We have done it in other parts of the world, but our focus here really is to be accommodation providers and to fill in that space and that gap in service residences, which we feel is a great space gap here in this market, and that's our focus.
Paul, Rove started in Dubai as a trendy mid-scale lifestyle brand with a very active lobby meeting space. Branded residences historically been associated with luxury brands, Fairmont, Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons.
Why did we do it?
Yes, why did you do it?
So speaking of gaps, so I think, what we saw was, a lot of people were using our hotels as their home on monthly stays, et cetera, et cetera. So we had a lot of guests that were like, we love the environment, we love to live in a Rove. However, we'd love a kitchen, and we'd love it to be our own space. We also saw developers saying, look, we're looking for something different. Everybody's in the branded residences space. How do we do something that is cool, yet affordable, offers a differentiated product? So now we do, our kind of premise for the branded residences in what is super central locations, where maybe you'd build a higher end, higher category hotel or branded resi. But we offer smaller spaces, which allow a more accessible ticket price, but fully loaded facilities. So you have amazing facilities, which give that kind of, the people that want to be out exploring, that want to be in co-working spaces, that's the kind of target audience.
So it's kind of a starter home, or pied-à-terre?
I don't know about starter. I think it's for the kind. It's a bit like our hotels, right? We're for the young and young at heart. We're for people maybe they don't want to be. Maybe their purpose for travel or stay is different to the Ritz-Carlton guest.
Julien, Daniel, are you for the young at heart? What's your target here in KSA versus, say, other regions you work in?
Look, I think it's so if we look at the demand to buy premium branded residences, the motivations of the buyers are no different to other markets. You're in Saudi Arabia, you can have purchases from the region, but you have a sizable population. There is a clear gap in the supply for high quality residential projects in the luxury space. And I think you have a great pool of buyers that love staying in our hotels, whether it's a St. Regis, a WN Edition, a Ritz-Carlton. They love the experience when they stay in our hotels, and they want that experience in their home. So they can buy a residence, they know it's going to be designed as per, a Ritz-Carlton, for example, but they also know it's going to be managed. And they love the services, the attention to detail that we provide in our hotels, and we provide that in a residential setting. So whether it's a primary residence or secondary home, they like that. And remember, it's a significant purchase. So you buy into a project where you have a company that's been managing luxury hotels for 80 years that will maintain and look after the building. And that's good for value appreciation or integrity. So the demand and the buyer profile and the motivations are I think, the same. And we're just barely scratching the surface for now in Saudi Arabia. We've got 3 projects under Ritz-Carlton and Ritz-Carlton Reserve brands across both urban and resort projects. So we've got Ritz-Carlton Hotel and Residence in Al Khobar, and we've got a project here as well with Diriyah Gate. And we've launched that project for sale, and the response has been amazing. And we think there's a lot of opportunities to continue, not just in luxury, but also in premium. We also have a brand called Moxie, which is comparable to sort of a Rove positioning. It's a lifestyle and young brand, and we're very keen to explore that segment as well.
I think to add to what Julien said, effectively the whole thing is underpinning who is the product for. what is the buyer profile? And that's done through solid empirical research. And we look at sort of what is the profile in terms of the age, nationality, family makeup, purchase motivation. Is this a resort location where there's a demand for a rental program? How do you then structure that rental program in terms of the amount of personal usage? The extent of dedicated residential facilities comes into play because it impacts service charge as well. And, price sensitivity, different source markets. Within KSA, obviously, I agree completely with what Julien said. The buyer profile is very similar to other markets. In the luxury and ultra-luxury end, these can be primary homes. These can very often be fourth, fifth, sixth homes for people. And they might alternate between, do they use their home? We have owners, for example, who bought the Raffles, the OWO Residences by Raffles in London, that they've chosen to designate it for a few years as their primary residence. They have 4 or 5 other residences. With Saudi Arabia opening up to sales to non-Saudi nationals, we're obviously also going to see a significant growth in other nationalities who will be purchasing within the kingdom. And if you look at some of the projects around here, obviously Diriyah Gate is one type of project, but then some of the incredible resorts being planned on the Red Sea are obviously a completely different type of profile of buyer.
This to the panel. There are some legal uncertainties here. You have certain restrictions on sale, alcohol restrictions. The jointly owned property laws are somewhat in flux. You have in constructing properties needing separate gyms, separate facilities, and you don't know if that's going to change or not. How do you cost effectively plan for that and build when you really don't have a certain plan?
I think from my side, I think things like gyms, pools. I think you have to be smart on your design and recognise that that may change in the future, as we've seen in other markets. So I think I would consider that, and I think every market has its own challenges, whether it's legal or development-wise. So yeah.
Which is true. There's no jurisdiction anywhere, even where this all began in Miami Beach in New York, where that is perfect legislation. With the higher end properties?
Yeah, look, our business model works perfectly fine in Saudi Arabia for us to be able to manage these properties on a long-term basis. So there's absolutely no issues for us on that front. And we work across Europe, Africa, Middle East, where we have 70 projects, and all of them with different real estate laws, and we have good ways to structure all of our projects. And from a facilities point of view, it's also brand dependent. So for example, if you're developing a luxury branded residence, even if it's with a hotel, you want that the residences have their own common areas, which is a lounge, pool, gym, some dedicated areas for the private owners, because it's quite important. And if you're looking at a more premium level, you have maybe more selected facilities. And we work with also what's the local market. So in some markets, our team will say, well, we must have a golf simulator in there, and that may not be the case here, for example.
And I think the extent of dedicated residential amenities is something that it sort of keeps morphing. If you go back a quarter of a century to when branded residences first started, they were typically co-located with a hotel with perhaps a separate lobby, but that was more or less it. The idea was they would share all the facilities of the hotel. Now you're moving into having, as Julien was saying, a significant amount of dedicated residential space. You can have projects in our luxury side with 800 to 3,000 square meters of dedicated residential amenity space. And it's important, Scott, to your point about the legal framework, these are buyers who are making a huge financial commitment. As a human being, the biggest investment any of us can do with our money is the real estate that we choose to buy. So
let me ask them that question. Our industry has a pretty, at least maybe I'm a bad lawyer, but the projects I do, from LOI to opening the doors, I would estimate about 35%. That's a lot of wasted time and money. I did one project 4 times. It was finally opened. But with a hotel, you're dealing with one owner, And if he doesn't build, it's too bad, you take that small sign down. But with branded residential, you've sold these Fairmont residences, Ritz-Carlton residences to buyers that are partially funding the development. And if it goes bust, all these people, multiple buyers, are going to not be complaining about Vassia's real estate company. They're going to say, my Fairmont residence, my Ritz-Carlton residence didn't get built. How do you vet against that extremely high brand image risk?
Well, that effectively comes from, firstly, we're quite careful about who we'll typically partner with. We expect them to have a strong track record in hospitality and preferably also in residential development. We want to have that alignment of interests, really, where whilst, yes, they might have sold and exited from in terms of that particular project, there is a long-term commitment. They want to make sure that property is well built, well managed, because it's part of their business card for the next project. But then also from a contractual perspective, we're making sure that there are provisions that stop the developer being able to use the money and run off, or if for whatever reason the market grinds to a halt and they've sold 30% and use the deposits to build, that the purchaser's either in a situation where they can get their money back, or that the owner has put a structure in place which ensures that the property is completed.
So again, why we don't do branded residences in this market yet. We do service residences. And I guess your question about facilities and how do you ensure that the contemplations of law requirements and market requirements. So I think for us, we take a step of it's very clear, right? We it is a very market dictated approach in terms of what is required in each micro location. And we make a decision, that is based on, what is market specific and something which takes a look on future proofing as well. So I think this is all disciplines that, as owner operator ourselves, we are very careful about in terms of ensuring that we build for the location, we build for the project, we design for the location, we design for the project, and it's future proofing. But again, the reason why we're not in branded residences is because in this market, we feel that the gap for residential apartments is huge, because with all the huge projects which are happening now, at the start of each project, whether it's having your consultants come in, having your technical expertise come in, they need a place to stay, and they do not want to stay in hotels. They want to stay in apartments, which with services, with kitchen and with services, and that's a great way for us to come in. And as we move through the whole project life cycle of that project, whether it's from a design perspective and a construction perspective, where you need technical experts, and when the property opens, you're dealing with your corporate guests, your leisure guests, which also requires, our accommodation offering. It's for us, we find that it is a self-perpetuating demand throughout the life cycle, and hence our focus is on the residential apartment space and not in the branded space for now.
Do we have any questions from the audience? If not, the long term of these projects, typically in the US, Europe, a developer builds, he sells this, and he wants to get out. But you have relatively strong legal systems. Here, the developer, how do you keep the assurance that what I've paid for is going to be maintained, that the other parties, the service charges are going to be collected, that the standards are going to be maintained, that I'm the life of the project under the brand?
Yeah. I mean,
You insist on the owner stays in the project,
Yes.
either through retained units or common areas, so that they're...
Yeah, I mean, so back to your earlier question, I'm certainly not an expert as the colleagues at the end of the table, but I think for me and for us, it's really, there's two bits, right? So there's the legalities, which I think everybody on the table would be protected, but then there's your brand risk, and I think it's all down to who you work with ultimately. We would insist the developer stays in the project in terms of a unit or whatnot, but ultimately I think, as with anything, particularly in newer developing markets, you have to have the right partner.
And I think, look, somebody who's buying a branded residence, they want their property to be maintained, and they want the services, the facilities to be maintained in accordance to what they bought in. So by nature, you have the owners of the building that are, keen to maintain the same level of facilities as when they purchased. The second thing is we work together.
Hopefully, somebody loses
Hopefully,
their job.
exactly.
Brand standards are expensive.
So
They're
the
attractive, but
second
they're
thing is
expensive over time.
we work together with a partner and we find a governance structure that works for everyone. So our role is we want that the building is maintained according to standards. We have a lot of owners that have put so much money, into a residence to have these services and facilities. We want to keep them happy. And we also work, we have dedicated residential operations team, and we've been managing residential projects for 25 years. And they're still all in the system and all in our pipeline and project. We haven't had a single property come out. Our role is to keep the owners happy, maintain the brand services integrity, and we don't manage a hotel. We don't manage a residential project like you manage a hotel. You have customers that have put millions into their unit. They live there. It takes months, if not years, to build a relationship, understand them. It's a completely different business model. And we have at Marriott a dedicated residential management team. We have a dedicated governance team. We study the local framework so that we put together a structure that works for us, for the buyers, for our partner on a long-term basis.
And I know that, things that I know both of us also sort of do is, every year when we prepare the service charge budgets, etc., they're not just arbitrarily prepared by the property with no oversight. There's a huge amount of work that comes in from the corporate level in terms of making sure that the service charge, ultimately we have to sell that to each homeowners association, each individual residence owner. We have annual residence owner satisfaction surveys. So we know what they're happy with, what they're not happy with, and we make sure that they feel the service charge actually is value for money. So they're in there for the long run. The value that they bought.
If the owners don't pony up the service charge, the developer's still on the hook, right? Not
Sorry?
Marriott,
It depends on it will depend typically on the legal framework. I think you're referring to, for instance, cases of standalone residences. Obviously, there is an aspect you have to be able to maintain the level of quality and the brand standards. It's in everyone's interests to be able to do that. It's also one of the reasons why not every country in the world is a country that makes sense for at least hotel-branded residences. So by and large, in most countries where you'll find branded residential, especially the hotel brands, we will make sure that there is a legal framework that does enable sufficient action to be taken, whether it be the hotel owner has to take action to cover a shortfall and then can then recover, whether it's the HOA has the legal ability of taking that enforcement action. There will be ways that we'll look at and making sure that you can still continue to maintain the standards of the property.
Let me curb the enthusiasm a bit to the panel. Do you think this sector is overheating? And I ask that because everybody seems to be getting into the branded residence game. Car companies, fashion companies. A few months ago in Dubai on Sheikh Zayed Road, there was fashion TV residences. Well, I understand if I buy a Fairmont, I buy a Four Seasons, they've been in the living business. I kind of know what their brand promise is. Fashion TV, what am I going to get? A lingerie show through the lobby at 6 o'clock every night? What do they know about hospitality? Same thing with the car companies. I mean, do you think too many people are getting in this sector, apart from self-interest?
No, it's a good question. I think a lot of players saw an opportunity. I think you're more talking about Dubai, where we've seen this happen. No, not really here. There is a lot of players. I think what differentiates us from maybe fashion brands, car brands, is that we've been managing buildings and luxury hotels for 80 years, and people come and stay in our hotels, whether it's Fairmont or Ritz-Carlton. They love the services we provide. They want that in their residential setting and will be in the building for decades. I don't know what's the strategy for fashion brands or car brands once you've got a great design and a nice name. I think we still haven't seen any of these open, so it's a good question for later.
The proof is in the statistics as well. You have 1,300 branded residences around the world in terms of the network and the pipeline. and there are more than 200 players currently active in the branded residential space. 80% of all the branded residences globally are hotel branded residences. And if you look at Marriott, Accor, and Four Seasons, the three of us represent 37.5% of all branded residences around the world and 45% of all hotel branded residences around the world. So it really does show that whilst, yes, you've got 200 or so brands, to Julian's point, not everyone is into, there is a market for it. Some people will be fashion aficionados, car aficionados, but others will sort of, they really do look into who is actually going to be operating my residence, and that's a totally different value proposition.
Yeah, I think drawing back to, again, not in branded residences, but just thinking about, service apartments and why, do our guests want to stay in, service apartments which we operate, right? And it's all about, the hotel facilities and amenities which they appreciate and which they enjoy. It is also the reliability. It is also, about the simplicity in terms of dealing, with Ascott when it comes to making, decisions on, relocation, where to stay. So, I think all these, are what we call value adds, as to what makes a brand, very important, right? I guess at the end of the day, the crux of the matter is that, all of us specialize in certain things, and to keep to our specialty and not try to do things which is, sort of outside our specialty, because at the end of the day, we will be judged by what we deliver and our performance at the end of the day, and our longevity in the business. So, for us, we are very clear in terms of who we want to be, what role we want to play, where the gaps are, what we're good at, and we'll just continue focusing on that and get better and better, and that is, our strategy for Saudi.
Comparative advantage. Any questions? Gentleman in the back? Do we have a mic? Meanwhile, Daniel, we've run out of time. To Daniel, Julien, let's take your sales hat off for a moment and look at the perspective. What reasons would discourage you from buying a branded residence?
Lack of cash is my main reason why I haven't got
the
one.
obvious one. But no, where do you, from a buyer's perspective, what would you see as the potential areas of exposure?
Look, yeah.
Brand goes away.
I think I would want to make sure what I'm getting, right? Like if you're buying into any residential, you're buying into a name. You're buying into a property developer's reputation. You're buying into a location. End of the day, whenever you buy real estate, especially when you buy off-plan, you look at who is building it, where it is located, how much am I spending, and how much am I going to have to pay in service charge, what am I getting for it. I think with a branded residence, just like I would vet who is the property developer, I would check who is going to be running this building, what am I getting for my money. I think that's the number one thing I would check, like what am I buying into. Is the property developer, is the brand, is managing building residential a 100% focus for that company? Is this something they do, or are they more busy building engines and four-wheeled machines? I think that's where I would put a focus and be careful.
The gentleman back there, you had a question?
Thank you. Thank you very much for a very interesting session. The drivers for a developer looking into, and I'm thinking more about hotel branded residence here, have been discussed and are relatively clear, but to kind of add on to your point in terms of potential downside, if you're a hotel owner and you've sold residences and then you have to underpin those residence arrangements in perpetuity, will this potentially make it more difficult to sell your hotel to a third party who hasn't benefited from, obviously, the sale of those residences?
That's a great question.
Great question. It actually really makes it often a lot easier to sell because you've enhanced the hotel economics. So when Scott was talking about the win-win-win at the beginning, sort of the win for the developer is actually sort of developer/hotel owner. So when you co-locate a project between a hotel and the branded residential components, you're able to have a lot of cost synergies between the hotel and the residences. So those cost synergies could represent anywhere, depending on the scale of the hotel and the residences. You could be talking about saving $80,000. You could be talking about saving $300,000 a year off the P&L of the hotel. So when you put a multiple on that, that's huge. You then also look at the additional revenue from 200 or 100 or 300 residence owners who are hugely incentivized and committed to spending money in the hotel F&B outlets, at the hotel spa, ordering a la carte services, dining, laundry, housekeeping. All of that is incremental revenue into the hotel. So you have got, and most of the liabilities that the initial developer has, they do remain typically with the initial developer. So it depends, of course, on at what point in sale, at what point in the time frame the initial developer is thinking of selling the hotel. But either way around, the overwhelming economics are strongly in favor of facilitating that sale rather than
You would
hindering.
never let the developer sell his retained pieces of the residence but keep the hotel.
So
They have to be together, yes?
yeah, the
Yeah.
two go together.
Well, if no more questions, any others? We're out of time then. I'd like to thank the panel. Thank you for the question, and thank you for attending.